Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing how I made this fun cinematic shadow box die card with some of the newest stamp sets from Penguin Palace Stamps' latest release from spring 2021, and that is their beautiful Africa stamp set. So the cinematic shadow box die makes this beautiful 3D pop-up effect that fits perfectly in an envelope and pops up when you take it out. So I'm going to show exactly how I made this card now. So I've gone ahead and die cut all the pieces needed for this card, and all of these dies come in the Cinematic Shadow Box die set. So the main pieces of the shadow box are cut out of Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, which is this light brown. So the first one is just this big rectangle, which will make up the back of the shadow box. And the second two pieces are the side pieces. So I use sort of these triangular shaped dies to cut out two more pieces from Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. The next piece was this sort of middle support piece, which I also cut out of Neenah Desert Storm. And then finally, it's the front piece of the box, which I cut out using this rectangle die, again out of Neenah Desert Storm. Then there's a few dies that have little dot patterns around the edges, and these make up sort of the panels that go onto the card box. And so I cut these out of this sort of forest moss green color. And the last one, this rectangle, I cut out of Strathmore Bristol Smooth because I'm going to do some ink blending on it, and this will form sort of the backdrop for the cinematic shadow box. Finally, I cut four pieces out of this smaller rectangle die, which are going to form sort of the steps of the cinematic shadow box. And I cut these out of a darker brown to sort of look like the ground. So those are all the pieces that are involved in this die, and I'm going to show you how to assemble them in a moment. But first, I'm blending onto this background piece. Like, again, I mentioned that this will be the backdrop of the cinematic shadow box, and this is that smaller rectangle die that has the dotted edge in it. I'm blending this to look like a sunset, so I'm using a red, an orange, and a yellow ink. I used Crackling Campfire, Wild Honey, and Fossilized Amber. And I'm just blending them on in stripes one by one with my blending brushes, and making sure to just go back and forth so that the colors blend really nicely together. And like I mentioned, this will be the backdrop of the cinematic shadow box die. I wanted to blend this first before I built the actual box because I wanted to give it some time to dry off camera while I'm working on the rest of the die and assembling everything. So that's why I did this first, and I recommend you do the same if you're doing any ink blending. So again, I'm just going back and forth between the colors and really making sure I get a nice blend, and I really love how it looks like a sunset. I'm just splattering on some gold watercolor using an acrylic block and my paintbrush just to get some really nice flecks in the background, which I think adds a really nice level of interest. Like I mentioned, I'll put that aside to dry now while I assemble the box. So to assemble the box, I'm starting with the background piece and the side pieces. And for every piece that I need to fold, I'm folding along the scored edge and then reinforcing that fold with my bone folder, and that just gives it a really nice edge. So this side piece will just go right onto the bottom of that background, and I'm using some tape runner to just lay that tape onto that folded piece and then stick it right down onto the bottom corner of that back piece. Now, I am really bad at lining things up. I find I need to put it at like every different angle to make sure. Hopefully you don't have as much trouble with that as I do. So next I'm taking the other side piece, and I'm just taping that directly onto the back, and I'm reinforcing the fold with my bone folder, adding some tape runner, and then just lining it up with the very bottom on the other side of the back piece. Then just kind of turning it to make sure I'm getting a good placement, and then sticking it right down. So now you see you have these two side pieces sort of flipping up from the background piece. Next I'm adding the front piece. For this, again, I'm folding it in at the edges and then reinforcing that fold with my bone folder. I'm doing this on both sides to make sure that both sides are folded and nice and even and ready to go. Now I can put some tape onto the folded pieces and just stick that down onto the side piece. You can see where it sticks there. It just sticks right onto the edge of that side piece and kind of folds forward. And then what you can do is you can stick it onto the other side piece to form that box. However, before we do that, I'm going to add in the ground pieces that kind of, again, make those steps as part of the shadow box. So I've got four of these brown pieces, and I'm going to fold the ends in for every single one and reinforce them with my bone folder. Then I'm going to place some tape, and excuse my head as I come in here and kind of make sure that this is lined up properly. But what you're going to do is you're going to line up those brown pieces with the score lines on those side pieces. So it's a little bit hard to see on the camera, but when you can see them up close, you'll see that those side pieces that are in Neenah Desert Storm have little score lines, 4 of them. And that is because those score lines tell you where you should put all 4 of your inner box pieces to make sure that they are evenly spaced. So I'm just going one by one, adding a little bit of tape to each one, and then sticking it down onto the side piece exactly where that score line is to make sure that it is perfectly spaced. I think you probably don't have to do this. If you wanted your ground pieces, your steps of the shadow box to be closer together, farther apart, you could totally do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But this just makes sure that you've got 4 equally spaced pieces, and it does make sure that they fit nicely into that support piece as well. So once I've taped all 4 of those ground pieces down, you can see that they're all kind of sticking off to the left, and I can fold them over, and they are going to adhere onto that side piece on the right. Before I do that, I'm sticking my background piece in. So this is my blended piece, just using a little bit of liquid glue and just gluing that right onto the background. Now, in hindsight, I do wish that I had blended the red color up a little bit higher. I didn't quite realize how much of that would get lost by being hidden by the ground pieces, which you'll see in the final card. In the final card, you can really only see the orange and yellow. So that's something that I'll remember for the future, and I definitely recommend if you're doing this, try to remember that almost the bottom half of that piece will be hidden. I would say you should probably still blend it, but you might not, you don't want to count on seeing that part really clearly. Okay, so now I'm taking that support piece and putting some tape on it after I've reinforced that fold, and just sticking it down right down in the middle towards the bottom of that back piece. And now it's time to sort of slide in those ground pieces onto the support piece. It's a little bit hard to see what I'm doing on camera here because you kind of have to have it at a very specific angle to get it to work. At least I did. But what I'm doing is I'm just sticking each of those ground pieces into one of the slots on the support piece. And you can see it a little bit better there once I tip the box up onto its end. Now the next step will be to adhere all of these pieces onto the right piece of the shadow box. The right side piece, I should say. So I'm really just making sure that all of those pieces are in their slots, and then I put a little bit of tape on the front piece of that support piece, and then I fold it over the front panel of the box and it tapes right down. Then I can put some tape on all of these edges of the ground pieces, and then I can fold the right side piece over and it will adhere to all of those pieces completely properly, and then when you open the box, they sort of open as well, which is really cool. So the last part is now to adhere that front piece onto the side piece as well. So I just put a little bit of tape on it and stuck it together, and now you can see the whole box is put together with the support piece in the middle really holding those steps in place, and everything adhered on both sides so that when you fold the shadow box each way, it folds completely flat, and then when you have it unfolded, it sticks out like this in this 3D way, which is so cool. So here I am folding it. You can see, for me, I think it folded a little bit better one way than the other, so I think in future I might need to finagle a little bit with how I'm putting things together and really make sure that I get everything in the right spot, but it folds completely flat one way, which is nice. Okay, so off camera I've gone ahead and stamped, colored, and cut out a bunch of images from the Beautiful Africa stamp set. I didn't show this on this video because I've already spent a lot of time on this video showing you how to make this box, which I think is the purpose and the main priority of this video. If you do want to see videos of me coloring and stamping out images, definitely check out some of my other videos on the Penguin Palace Stamps channel, which has a lot of coloring and stamping in those. So I think one of the most fun parts of this cinematic shadow box die is just assembling all of your pieces. So I kind of just went through and picked where I wanted each one to go, how deep I wanted it to be, and then I added a little bit of tape to the bottom and stuck it right on. It's super easy and it makes these super cute 3D scenes. I also stuck a few of the images right onto the background so you can see those clouds and the clouds with the sun. I stuck with some liquid glue right onto the background as well. So now it's time to adhere these panels onto the box. And if you remember, we had one rectangle to go on the front and two side, I guess, trapezoid type shapes to go on the sides. So I'm just gluing those down with liquid glue. Off camera, I did go ahead and stamp out the sentiment onto the front panel too. It says, "You are elephantastic," which is an adorable pun. I just stamped that out in some black ink. So once I have these side panels glued on, I did add a few more little images because I had some leftover images. So I just stuck them onto the side to create a few more little mini scenes. So for this, I just used either some tape or some liquid glue and just stuck those images straight down onto the side. And I think I had on one side like a tree and a rock and a leaf, and on the other side I had a little lake and a little fern or something. So it's kind of cute. If you have these leftover images, it's a nice way to use them to just make these little side scenes that really just add to the box, and you'll be able to see these as the recipient when you get it in the mail because it will be folded flat. So that side panel is something that you will see very clearly when you first get this. So it's nice to have it a little bit decorated. So that was really fun. So that is it. That is the card, and I just love how 3D this is. It's so cool. Right now I have this sitting on my shelf because I just love to look at it. It's like a piece of decor, but I will give it away soon because I think it would be nice for someone to get this in the mail as well. It's really nice how when you fold it, it fits completely flat and it will fit into an envelope like for a slimline card, which is perfect. And I just think it creates a really nice 3D scene, so this was super fun. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos like this, definitely check out the homepage of the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel, which has a lot more videos. If you want to see more of my cards, head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the description box below the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!